Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to have all of you here today. My name is Jennifer Franklin, and I'm the program director of the Hudson Valley Writers Center. Sophia Bannister and I are so happy to have you with us today as we honor Saskia Hamilton, important professor, poet, editor, teacher, friend, family member to so many. If this is your first time joining us for a reading, welcome. We hope you continue to come to our readings, classes, and events. We hope some of you will return tomorrow for an afternoon of new poetry and translation with Arthur Z., Daniel Tobin, Wang Jiaxin, and Carol Moldaw. I want to thank our founders, the board, our teachers, and our students who are the beating heart of the center. We also want to recognize the foundations and organizations who support us, including the Bydale Foundation, the David G. Taft Foundation, NISCA, and Arts Westchester. I also want to thank my colleagues, Sophia Bannister, Misty Yarnell, and Christina Papadopoulos for all of their hard work. Thank you to so many who are reading and participating in this memorial today. We really appreciate all of the time and effort you have put into making this a really meaningful experience.
Hey, I guess I will start. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today to honor Saskia Hamilton, who is a great poet and a beautiful daughter, and all of our excellent friend. She's still our friend. She's still with us. I want to first acknowledge Saskia's mother, Elise, who is here with us. Elise, you are the eternal mother. Your grace and wisdom and vulnerability move me, and I love you. Elise has recently lost her brother, and so we send you double love today, as always. There are 3 other cosmic mothers here, 3 women who were crucial beyond Elise and Catherine Barnett's service, really, to ensuring that Saskia's environment and household ran smoothly and that everything was suffused with love, beauty, and dignity. I have never seen such an organized death, and I commend all for the atmosphere I stepped into each time and that's Miranda Field and I, stepped into the apartment. Angela, Katia, Yasmin, we see you and we thank you so much for your excellent care of our friend and for your deep love for Saskia, Elise, and Saskia's son and Elise's grandson, Lucien. We send love to Lucien today and always. Here is a quote from Thomas Wolfe's Look Homeward, Angel, dating myself, though I guess I don't need to. This is after the main character's brother was killed in the war. And the character says, we can believe in the nothingness of life. We can believe in the nothingness of death and of life after death. But who can believe in the nothingness of Ben? Who can believe in the nothingness of Saskia? I am incredulous each day. There are friends present who knew Saskia much, much longer than I did. Catherine, Miranda, Fiona, for example. I met Saskia late in life, maybe 8 years ago. Though when we met, I felt I had always known her. Many of my friends were her friends, and we circled in the same poetry circles for decades. This makes me even sadder that I could have known her longer, sooner, if I had been braver, more confident, and smarter. I could have had more time with her. I met Saskia at the Barnard copier, nervous in front of this rock star. And a few of us know that she actually was a rock star. I blurted out some crazy thoughts I was having about poetry that day. Saskia graciously pretended that she understood what I was saying. Graciousness was one of her greatest traits, though she had many more, such as loyalty, empathy, and wisdom. I trusted her instantly and loved her 1 second afterward. That was it. A late life friendship is sort of like a love affair. There were flowers sent, packages, gifts, books exchanged. Once she became ill, all I wanted to do was to take the fear away from her. That it was she who comforted us. Things I remember. I remember laughing our asses off at Le Monde on Broadway, that filthy hellhole, one early spring afternoon, sitting outside in the sun, drinking white wine. I thought, we will be friends forever. We were laughing about the futility of organizing and executing one's life, as if crazy stuff didn't interfere often and push one off course. One of us threw a napkin up in the air. She had laughed, only she had done just that, pushed forward through difficulty to achieve so much. She was a scholar, a poet, a professor, a mother, a perfect daughter, and a beloved friend to many. I remember the day she pointed me toward the ghost in the wasteland and how he fades on the blowing of the horn. I remember the day she said she had been feeling run down, that maybe she was experiencing low iron. And I said she should eat more raisins and get a bag of raisins and keep them in her desk. Would that this had been the cure. I remember Saskia as we stood before her in tears one day saying, I just ran into a bad piece of luck. I remember one afternoon, Miranda suggesting we get Saskia and Familia a Christmas tree, and watching Saskia agree to this plan, Miranda and I dragged the tree in and stood it in the corner near Saskia's tall credenza, upon which sat a literary treasure, a colorful wooden ship of fools or clowns that was once owned by Elizabeth Bishop. Bringing the pine tree inside felt like bringing the outside in, the outside she would never experience again. I remember the last time we saw Saskia and how we read Wallace Stevens' Sunday Morning out loud, and how I flinched each time the word death appeared. I remember that same day that Saskia was wearing earrings, and I said to her, you are the girl with the pearl earring, and how she smiled at me, and how her right hand lingered at her ear, feeling the earring. I remember how the last time I saw her, I kissed her on her right cheek and said, we will be back. As I usually said, though I knew I would never see her again. She looked up at me while I was kissing her, and I will never forget her enormous, beautiful Piero della Francesca eyes at that very moment. My last memory is of Miranda and I going to be with Elise in the apartment in the days after Saskia died. I remember how when we entered the apartment, Elise was all in white. She looked so exquisite. She looked at us like a child who was lost. And I remember how we all sat by the window in silence and grief, and how Miranda took Elise in her arms and rested her head on Elise's head, and how I watched them both in such deep pain, born out of love. I will never forget any of it. I will always walk with Saskia in my mind and heart. I would do anything to bring her back. Thank you so much for listening, and love to you all.
Oh God, Reagan, that was so beautiful. I don't even know how to speak after that. I will. I can't quite separate Saskia yet from her dying, from the tragedy. What happened to Saskia was a tragedy. It was so unfair. It was wrong. It was wrong that this happened to her. It was frighteningly fast, and it was also drawn out. But what I saw while Saskia was going through the final stages of her illness was Saskia, still Saskia, as beautiful and good and brilliant and aware of everything. I don't think anything ever came into her sphere unnoticed. Just hear her friends and colleagues speak about her, just read her poems. I also saw Saskia close to the end, provided with that same quality of attention, that deep noticing, deep comprehension. I saw that Saskia felt known and held and loved, and that her wishes, most importantly for Lucian, would be honored, and that he would continue to be known and loved and attended to when she could no longer do it. I wish this hadn't happened to Saskia and to Lucian and Elise and us, her friends, and to poetry. But I saw that dying wasn't lonely for Saskia. The person who brought her into this life held her all the way through to where she had to let her go. Elise, your love was profoundly important to Saskia, and you gave her exactly the right portion of exactly what she needed, exactly when she needed it. You gave her an incredible gift, and thank you.
Thank you, Miranda and Reagan. I think it's my turn, but if it's not, let me know.
It's your turn, my dear.
Thank you. So I'm gonna forgive me, Professor Barnett and Professor Baswell have heard this, but I wrote a letter to Saskia, an email, and she responded about a month before her passing. So that's what I'll be reading today. Thank you for having me. I printed it out as soon as I got it back. I printed it out and I keep it on my board. So I've got it. Yeah, so dear Saskia, I'm in contact with your wonderful friends, and I want you to know there is no need to respond. I'm only sending this along to thank you. I hope you save your strength for your loved ones and for thinking your brilliant thoughts. Professor Hamilton, forgive the hastiness of this letter. I wish I had forever to revise it. After all, you are the person who taught me what revision is. I'm writing as I've always written for your classes. Longhand with my computer waiting, cursor blinking, readying itself to bring clarity to a messy hand. I'm worried I don't have the time to revise here, to make this something you would smile at or give a throaty giggle to. You were the one that showed me the Merwin poem, the one about Behrman, the one about never being sure if the writing is any good. I am not writing a poem for your workshop. I am not 18 anymore, and you are no longer my beloved, brilliant professor. You are brilliant and beloved, just no longer my prof. You're really everyone's now. I'm writing to let you know that in college, you gave me a soul and eyes, a heart. Meeting you changed my life. I'm writing this at the Studio City Public Library. It's not Millbank or my 100 square foot dorm room where I sweat memorizing the last 100 lines of Your Paradise Lost. Every day I think of poetry, and so every day I think of you. You are magic. You conjured a world I'd never felt before. No one in all of academia or Hollywood has revealed what you did in your classrooms. Divine and a little too powerful. It is the closest to something greater I've ever been. Despite all of that, you led with a special kindness and no ego. Today, I sit in this Valley Library writing and waiting for my boss's car windows to be detinted. I'm trying to make it out here. I won't use the scare quotes around the phrase make it because you were the one to teach me that irony is often strongest in the image itself. No matter how hard economic realities are, how hard it is to try and make a living, my soul will always see your hand setting a small cork ball down on the table, or a child's red block, or the empty vase. I'll hear you urging us to look, really look. There's no way to write this letter. I've been meaning to write to you almost every week in the years since graduation. 5 years after I wrote this letter, but I see your check marks and underlines on old copies of my poems. I hold them dear. I know I am one of the many young souls you unlocked and showed how to be. I know somewhere, somehow, we'll see each other again. Until then, I'll read everything you've written and edited. I'll cherish your check marks, and I'll try to see the way you taught me. Thank you for being my teacher. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Love, Cap. And then about a day later. Dear Cap, I saw Maureen the other day and we spoke of you. And now your beautiful email appears in my inbox on a good day when I can find some time at the keyboard, days which are somewhat rare. Thank you for your most eloquent, generous, and kind thoughts. I don't know what I did in the classroom or out of it, but all you were and all you have become is within you. I am privileged to have opened a few doors into the mystery of poetry. I thank you for being such a wonderful and inspired student. I'm sure you've heard through Maureen that I am not well, generally speaking. I'm in hospice care now. However, I do feel quite well from day to day at the moment. I have a daily battle with pain that waxes and wanes by the hour, but otherwise my days are wide open enough for me to read and think. I'm not writing at the moment, but I finished a book of poems in December. I'm glad you're trying to make it in Hollywood, and I hope there are inspiring moments mixed in with the famous mundane things like waiting for a showrunner's car windows to be detinted, whatever a showrunner is. Stay true to your purpose, and you will reach the glorious harbor, as Robert Lowell translated a bit of Dante. I send you my love, Saskia.
Thank you so much, Cap. I'm so sorry.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much to everyone who's shared and read. This is so beautiful. It is an incredible honor to have known Saskia, a poet who has had such a profound impact on me. It is also an incredible honor to get to share a few words about her now with all of you. I know that I am one of many former students who feels her loss so deeply. In class, I remember Saskia carefully transcribing lines from Bishop's Cirque d'Hiver onto the board. As she wrote, she spoke, tracking the end rhymes, leading us to the moment when, through rhyme, the key in the fourth stanza quite literally unlocks the speaker's presence in the poem. Her attention to nuance and subtlety, the clarity with which she spoke, felt like magic. In her classroom, everything made sense. She taught us how a poem reaches out of the past, out of its own language, out of impossibility, and holds its living hand out to us. I first felt like a poet when in conversation with Saskia. She treated me with seriousness and warmth, and shared her thoughts about writing and life with candor and wisdom. Over the years, her support for me in my writing, her suggestions, and her correspondence have given me so much meaning, opportunity, and hope. I know that so many others feel this way too. How abundant her respect and generosity were. When I left her classroom, my education deepened as I read her books over and over again. I fell into their fierce, intimate movements, their unanswerable questions, their dreams. They transformed my sense of what a poem can do, of how a poet might order a world all their own. Lines from her poems live inside me. They animate and contour my world. I feel the sentience of the body, the peculiarity of landscapes, the clarity and confusion of longing, the presence of personal and collective histories. It is through her poems that I have learned to see with my own bright eye and dreaming eye. I turn to Saskia's work when I'm losing faith in words, when I need to remember how poetry helps us see, feel, live. I turn to her work when I feel alone in my sense of the world. In this way, I never am. It is hard to express my reverence for Saskia as a person and a teacher. Hard to express the depth of the connection I feel with her work. Her poems remind me that this is the condition we live with, that this condition is the beginning, not the end, of expression. But I'll end here with such sadness and with such gratitude for Saskia's genius, vision, and kindness. Thank you.
Ira, that was so beautiful.
Thank you everyone for being here. It's so wonderful to see you all, and thank you to the organizers for creating this space. I think every time I go to an event about the book or an event about memories of Saskia, I meet more people that she held dear, and that has been, you know, a really wonderful side of a really unbearable thing. In that I speak as a student of Saskia's, I'm one of many here and in the world. I've been moved and awed to watch so many students of hers share memories over the last few months, online and in conversation and in art. I feel more than ever in my grief like one node in a whole root system of people who have been lucky enough to learn from her. And I hope my brief words here hold the echo of the many other students who share similar gratitudes, overlapping gratitudes. Our first contact was through sharing a teacher. We had the same mentor, John Burkhart, during our respective high school first forays into poetry, which is a long time ago for me and was a very long time ago for her. In college, Saskia became my professor and later my thesis advisor. Her workshop was and is to this day one of the kindest artistic spaces I have inhabited, characterized by an iridescent mix of curiosity underlaid by a profound steadiness. We flourished under her guidance. During the first throes of the pandemic, I worked with Saskia on transcribing the letters between Elizabeth Bishop and Marianne Moore, which was a strange doubled relationship for our own, a lost, slightly hysterical younger poet and a measured, slightly bemused mentor writing each other back and forth. Our contact was at once fragmentary and intimate, mediated through these texts we were working on. I really treasure the kind of borderline nonsense emails that we sent back and forth in the mornings, just snatches of text. This is lure, not have, ear, not sun, just seeing it now, agree with lemon, horned frog, 2 words. I think about these all the time. I go back and I read them and they work in the way that poetry works. Recently, as I grieve, I found myself returning to one email from her about the project, about how to notate text that sits above the line, a line that doubles in memory. She said, "I don't know what practice you decided to follow in the wake of my silence, but I'm sure it's one that will make lucid sense to me when I turn my attention to it." Saskia was unfailingly generous in her attentiveness to me and to all of her students and to all of her loved ones. And she was unfailingly courageous and graceful in her willingness to delve into what sits above the line. Her mark is and always will be on how I write, how I teach, and how I read, which is to say how I live, and I am so lucky for it. Thank you all for being here, and to everyone who has loved her and everyone who continues to love her.
God, Perry, that was absolutely beautiful. Okay, so we'll start the reading portion now, and Sean Singer is going to kick it off.
So when Saskia's first book came out, As for Dream, I wrote to her, which I often do if I read a book I like, and I sent her a drawing I did of a bird. And I still have the letter she wrote back, May 20th, 2001. She was at Kenyon College at that time. And these are two poems from that book, which I mean, I didn't know, but I had a feeling that she was going to be a big deal, which was right. So this is The Song in the Dream. The song itself had hinges. The clasp on the 18th century Bible had hinges, which creaked when you released the catch. The book would sigh and expand. The song was of two holes joined by hinges, and I was worried about the joining, the spaces in between the joints, the weight of each side straining them. Another stupid party. I had to stand at the other end of the room and talk to 100 other people. My longing for him trailed after me, and although its nature had not changed, its agency had, as if it were the angel whispering at the back of my head, and if I turned, I would see on the floor behind me that we held each other. We kept insisting, always working towards the end of the story, his breath on me, the weight of the dream I had in which I kissed him and felt a skittish animal slip in. Tomorrow I'm going to do something about it.
I love those two poems that you chose. They're my favorite ones in that book. So I'm going to read from Corridor. I'm going to read Gerritta Sekod from the Exeter book, which was a poem she translated from Old English. It is written in scriptures that this creature appears plainly to us when the hour calls, while its singular power compels and confounds our knowing. It seeks us out one by one, following its own way, fares on with its stranger's step, never there a second night, native to no place, moves according to its nature. It has no hands, no feet, has never touched the ground, no mouth to speak of, nor mind. Scriptures say it is the least of anything made. It has no soul, no life, but travels widely among us in the world. No blood nor bone, but consoles all the children of men. It hasn't reached heaven, it won't touch hell, but takes instruction from the King of Glory. The whole story of its fate, limbless as it is, animate, is too obscure to tell. And yet, all the words we find to describe it are just and true. If you can say it, call it by its rightful name.
Beautiful. Oh. I'm going to be reading a poem called Inside from Divide These. And I'm reading it for a beloved student, Emily Kramer, who couldn't be here today. It's a very short poem, but very devastating. Inside. No one to hear but records for the broken player. No reason for order, but order persists from breakfast to bath, to work, rain falling at one speed, the windows darkening and blurring, accident beating against belief. A loud engine, which is one way to say one thing. The floors swept daily, though it takes at least 1 hour for the first, 1 for the last. In the pages of a book, quick studies of gesture, tense of hands. And now Jennifer and I are going to read the entirety of a poem that opens All Souls, called Faring.
Thank you so much for including me today. I did not know Saskia, but I admired her work as a poet and as an editor. And the most wonderful panel I ever attended anywhere was her panel at AWP when she published Letters of Elizabeth Bishop and Robert Lowell.
Mm.
And I had tongue cancer surgery and radiation in 2012. And my mother had to live with me for a year. So I know a little bit about the pain and the fear about leaving a child behind. And I just want to thank all of you for the care that you have given to her, especially her mother, all her friends, all her students. And there's nothing like the relationship between a student and a mentor, and the profound impact that she clearly had on all of you who have spoken today is extraordinarily moving. And I just really appreciate witnessing the love that you have for her. So thank you for letting me read part of Faring. Light before you call it light, graying the sky. Doves on window ledges call and answer, a low branching into sevenfold division. As means like, but also means while. As a cloud passes, as the shadow in the early morning, as the door turns on the hinge. Who was it who said that every narrative is a soothing down? Winter sun floods the table. 10:15, wave of nausea after morning pills. Hot tea, 6 candles, thin sheets of cloud now dominant. The boy wants glow sticks as protection. Radiator, is it a hiss or a shush? An aspirant or a consolation? Half our days spent living in the future, an illusion. 6 days later, as the light grows, so does my will for the weight that tethers us to the ground, shoulder blades descending and meeting, flowers at once religious, secular, and sexual. Blue sky, a dot of cloud, voices of children from the street below, children with a ball. Builders are raising the scaffolding, preparing their day's work. Talk with a friend who was taken by the wolf at night. Sediment on the windows, light flecks the edges of buildings. Wind works at the building, worrying it. Cyclist with a flickering lamp on the avenue below. Shadow of a neighbor crosses the window in the building opposite. Strength of feeling now vanished, but the memory of it is a kinship of some kind. In its recollection, it registers unease beneath the day. I love you, he says, but maybe we shouldn't profess our love for one another, because you know, it might mean you'll die.
And what is actual? The word derives from a cauterizing agent, red hot, is actual for one time only, as if only once could something be realized. In its weakened sense, it is opposed to potential, possible, ideal. Beside me on the sofa, the boy is restless with joyous movement and intermittent improvised joy. In the streets below, each passerby carries time internally. It opens the mind like a flower blown in its native bed. William Cowper in his laundered kerchief at table, he stares out of the poem in alarm. By Rue d'Amsterdam, inside the rib of the building, crowds rush to 3 imminent trains, wait by the sandwich and coffee kiosk, trailed by wheeled luggage, pigeons, soldiers moving among them. The eye of the corporal passes over a bystanding neighbor. Listings and times flap, click, shuffle. The building lists toward departure as if inclined to hear the far-off sound that marks the end of land. Musical interlude, another train entering the Great Mouse. And I will now read 2 pages of a quite devastating poem called Exits and Entrances to the Auditorium. Having been in Saskia's apartment, I just know the vision she was having here. Early afternoon snow falling on the city. From the chemotherapy suites, lights coming on in the offices of the building opposite. What would Dan Flavin make of stained ceiling tiles and the semicircular industrial lights here and in the integrative medicine center of the cancer hospital, some forms of symmetry. As for man, his days are of grass. For the wind passeth over it and is gone. Drops hanging from the wrought iron window guards, white sky, wet brick and sandstone, soaked water towers. Vagary, wandering or devious journey, a roaming about or abroad. So is the final confrontation with the mind spinning. Age of grievance and complaint. Back at home, the boy chattering, speaking to his game. What is the veil that writing and description put over all things? Narrative, scene, setting, persuasion. And then there is Antinos as Osiris, Lord of Silence, transformed by Hadrian in his grief. What practice will help prepare me? Reading Zbigniew Herbert, writing to Ryszard Karnicki on the black foam of the newspapers, urns of ashes in the burned garden, owls' puzzles in the night. We wake from sleep to sleep, the radiator knocking the floorboard, the dead poet and the elderly poet rowing us into the night, second sleep coming, while those emperors of speed, the Swifts, stir in the south and make their way, sleeping above us in the air. Now we're going to have a medley of voices read the poem All Souls in its entirety.
I'm going to read the first 5 brief entries in the poem, brief poems from All Souls. In the cupboard, a pocket watch in its case, velvet ribbon knotted on the click and winder, black as wet roads, soft as a tongue in the shadow of a closed mouth. Its precision jewel bearing is ruby. Its spade and whip hands would snap off with pressure from the smallest finger. And yet the escapement enforces its circle of unbreakable numbers. Someone has let it run down. Don't turn back, it's the wrong way, is the relation of chronology to history at all valuable here? Chemical burring of the tongue. Good to be on the other side of treatment for now. We scroll on. Would a codex restore the balance of recto and verso? Take up the book. Dreams luminous in anticipation of the alarm. When it comes, how dark and modest waking is. There are 5 mobs chasing the PPK gamer. The boy has a bow and spins in the air. 7:20, the school bus just gone. The driver swung the doors shut, and the faces of the children pressed to the windows as it drove off towards the river. Late in the season, eating a pear that is the memory of a pear. Silvery, dunked in frigid waters by the orchard keepers for transport. Mealy now, late season, fragrant of September and sun.
(1586). I was in the dictionary looking up the distinction between necessity and need, or requirement, the constraining power of circumstances. The dictionary gives examples from Sidney and Golding of the necessity that is conditional and not of the necessity that is absolute. Sidney met his end one morning when, writes Griviel, by the banks of the Isle, an unfortunate hand sent forth a bullet that broke the bone in his thigh. So great was his thirst, he asked for a drink, but before it touched his lips, he saw a poor soldier carried along, who ghastly cast his eyes up at the bottle. Sidney gave it to him. You, whose necessity, he said, is yet greater than mine. Within weeks, and with the fixing of a lover's thought on those eternal beauties, he died in Arnhem on the Baker's Street. 1944. She passed all along a room a bottle of currant juice. It went from hand to hand along all the stretchers, she wrote, some 25 or more, and came back still half full. Someone helped his neighbor to drink, since he had no hands. The Battle of Arnhem, and pressed in her house by the river, there lay 300 or more, one doctor, one orderly. The children sheltered in the cellar. She attended the men, read the English psalms to them. Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, she read. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. She returned to the cellar. What a long time you've been away, her daughter said, and asked for her doll's white linen. Again she climbed the stairs, and at the top she found a whole piece of the wall under the window, blown away, the wounded with it.
Town. Between the fields, the asphalt velvety in the rain. Where is the road bending to beyond? Green everywhere on the ground, though it's still the season of sleep. Sleep after harrowing, refinement after dispersal. Out of the window of the Committee on Preschool Special Education, a triangular intersection of traffic at the Uptown crossing. The parents here without their children to petition on their behalf are lonely, only in this passageway, the unaccompanied shelter of the 12th floor where they are signed in by a kindly woman to spend some hours waiting for a supervisor, always late with the corresponding gates of paperwork, but who has primary authority to accede or deny in many languages, for there is no loneliness in the company of children. With an air of apology, the young woman calls out, "Miss, sir," not knowing the names, and they try to catch in her glance to whom she wishes to speak, but the optic axes of her eyes coincide divergently, catching two families simultaneously. Every face responds with apology to the summons. The clerk's oblique eyes calling each of them, none of them, all of them, generally beheld. Is there a point to critical interpretation that gives us what we all know already, what inescapably and instantly strikes the eye, as Rosen wrote in the summer issue? Then Rix asked if Rosen would agree to any like assertion of a musical phrase striking the ear. I spent the hours that season in a basement library magnifying Bishop's hand 10 times to read the word title. On the daily train along the river, the conductor sometimes returned, sometimes pocketed my ticket. An interpretation, Rosen said, must either uncover or create a secret. I give you simply what you have already, reasoned Lowell. A fine morning, steady summer construction on the avenue, stories below.
1947. After the peace, November Sunday, a fine one, smallest child inside, eldest on a train journey, and he and a friend in the apple orchard by the river. He wore the military duty belt, the find from the brush that he'd been snapped in a few days before. They found the tree to climb and then jumped down this time onto a mine that had once, though the field had been swept, they all thought, been laid there by an unfortunate hand. For 60 years, his face looks up from the picture frames in the houses of their friends. She kept in her clothes a piece of his skull, and her thumb would stroke it, as she had once stroked the fontanelle. He has an ethic of solidarity with the victims of history, Heaney said of Herbert. He wanted his vast book of collected poems to be open to everyone in the world, and to hold the line. The Archangel also had forewarned Adam by dire example to beware. This afternoon at the Neue Gallery, Franz Marc, Die ersten Tier, 1913, one turns this way on the way to the field. Felix Nussbaum's Memories of the Crowds and Gatherings, 1925. Where does that line lead? What are they pressing to see, their backs to us? Will we join them? Knowing comes later. Later may be aftermath or prelude. An introductory statement is stenciled on the gallery wall.
Bonjour, Tristesse, on the Penguin Classics mug, which recollects the friend at the bar who kept saying Bonjour, Tristesse to an exasperated stranger over and over, as was their subsequent brief affair. They'd meet before 7. It was at an end for good each time. Goodness came along. Later, in the form of you, your aquiline profile, as Miss Hardwick remarked, when she saw the photograph taken with my last good camera, my own brief story of tea in the cup with the figure of the Arctic bird from the London Zoo we went to that first Sunday, you who lived near the zoos of Paris, Dublin, Amsterdam, to rise to the sounds of creatures calling for breakfast from the creepers, so triste and wonder pale we were, from each our own pasts, burnt as we had been by the mere rising of the sun, the good days ahead, the winter gifts yet to be gifted one day. New Year's drizzle 9, every church in the city solitary. Empty roads, bus gone. We stood on the curb looking at Hawksmoor's facade, the churchyard dead, were removed from the coming of the underground. Does it help to remember them when hearing the sound of time? Inside, in the long and narrow, pleas for intercession on yellow post-its left by the candles, a plaque for John Newton and other former reverends unknown. Half a street away, he slung a bag on his shoulder and walked down Rue de l'Ambre, past Raspail and the street sweeper. Wet pavement, dawn, one city becomes two, constitutive as against incidental, dividing within the structure as cells divide.
Dr. Hook. The sky, clay white, ashen. Ash, not a dirty but a clean thing, J. Ryle once said. Inside, cool, sinks to the corners, the flagstone convergence of walls, of floor and walls where children sometimes leave a treasure. And up in the rafters, wattle installation, paint cans, gas bottles, oxidized blades of old implements oily with dust, always there above the games, meals, foot traffic, summer parties, who and what moves across and beneath time. Day's end, labor easing, though not the rain. The elements are triumphing, said Ryle. Indoors then from the old gray city, or was it the sullen streets, passing the hall to the room, lamplit, dry, the voice of, oh, my grandmother, in memory, from memory, reading the Victorian pages of a book, entries marked with pencil, my task accomplished and the long day done, my wages taken. She is dying, said the nurse. It was a Tuesday in the new century, but not then. She found strength again. Her sturdy legs kept their footing in the beige laced shoes. A greenwood of beeches outside her window. A Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, a Saturday, a Sunday.
Schubert, Schumann said, wrote music as if never in doubt as how to continue, but his notes, conversant with the seemly structure of thinking, accommodated the stops, the rests, interlude, word inserted to prevent hiatus, an opening, an aperture, a break in continuity, an early death, not much time. He could persuade the line of thought to bend this way and bring it to belief. In search of a medicinal hour, Hortus. Sitting at the cafe with apple cake while garden goers stir the gravel path. Compacted here, luxuriant, trained growth of teaberry, gentian, trumpet vine, comfrey, field, rest harrow, etc. Our apothecary ancestor with his liber ingressus token entered here to gather the herbs for infusions that were to aid the unwell, caught in the far gone, far alone glance of mortality, moving the clock hands from 1 hour into the hour. Who is there now to announce the triumph of hope? But by and by, after seeds have been scattered, stirred and covered over, blossomed, gathered, dried, crushed, hot, late afternoon, bees crossing bees and white butterflies. Amsterdam to Zutphen. Late departure, hot carriage slowing just minutes out of the station. The book opens to June 1797. Wordsworth and Coleridge meet again. 1798. Travel together. W. Homesick. C. to Göttingen. Beechwood below, grass, fern, brambles. W. felt more invested in memory than philosophy. Rows of mown fields. Now and again at speed, life at rest. Train drivers chatting. Small child on the giant bench. Distorted clanging at the crossings. 2 horses, a donkey, the first animals. Then open landscape, nature, a realm of institutions and affections. Interrupted by discharged soldiers, the dead, all that was cut down, hanging still in the scent, leaving the west for the east. Oh. In decline, stricken and anxious alders, aren't we all? Copes of birch, then mostly beech.
In the chained library in Zutphen, the Old Testament was bound for the fathers by a bookbinder who stamped images of Luther inside the leather covers. He was employed for a year before they caught on. 1575 to 76. 10 years later, in September, the siege. Why today is it empty in the town, glossy fruit in tiers outside the grocers, plump red currants, gooseberries, blackberries in small green cartons. No sign of Philip Sidney, only beyond the walls in the grass by the river. Death closes all. Yes, but were they granted anything? None know beforehand. Breath going out for a decade, returning in a century, while those gathered there fall out of their own pockets? Or is it the count and rhythm, unable to fix a mark or a lover's thought at the moment when the face of the encounter became knowledge completed? Home from school, from the other room, the washer revolving, and the child playing virtually with a friend. I'm going to duplicate my optic staff. Taon. The church in the valley is abandoned now. Mold climbing the stone walls, soft mud in the mire, clusters of gentian and swordgrass by the footpath. Holy, holy, sang its choristers, the generations of children, of children, of children, of children, over 1,000 years. Speak, tongue. And the swallows interweaving there, Coleridge noted, sometime between 1794 and 1798.
Reading the news, waiting for sleep or the night to pass. Tap of rain on the window unit, desk of unfinished work in the next room. X the painter has died. Images in my hand of the enormous faces she painted, the cause of death in narrative paragraphs, all the world of representation compressed on the screen. Why retell the stories of those before us? They already spoke them or held their tongues, fell silent. A lifetime to overcome the prohibition not to. But the lens is all wrong these days. I thought it a sunset, a sketch, told again as all sunsets are. To say something sincerely, yet inauthentically is the danger. And Eliot struck ode from the first US edition of his poems to prevent his mother from seeing it. What prompted that thought? Body does not want to sit up just yet. 1, 2, 1, 2 go the taps. The child stirs, light herewith emitted in the dark.
How strange. But then strange should be dried out for a millennium, Rix says. Journey 2. Poor old words. Even so, how out of the way to be the subject? To whom would it be otherwise? Who becomes familiar with mortal illness for very long? I was a stranger, etc. Not everyone appreciates it. No one finds being the third person becoming. It's never accurate. But then one is headed for the past tense. Futurity that was once a lark. A gamble. A chance messenger. Traffic and trade. Under sail. The boy touches your arm in his sleep for ballast. It's warm in the hold. Ship and sky, the bounds of sight alone. Spheres so bounded. 1955. Alone in the mountains one day, she heard a half step behind her someone who, the multitude, a soul companion? Joining her at the left turn of the road, and she did not break her stride, her grandson from years hence, Or was it her dead brother from years past? From childhood? From infancy? Keeping her company for now? At a distance, a small wood islanded in the meadows, paths innumerable through beech and growth, ferns and decay, shifting light, raising the dry scent of summer sun from the ground. The quarter hour abided. It had no cessation while I stood there astride the bicycle. What is not bounded by the limits of perception, but looks on, a door unlatched, ajar, restless, irregular light and shadow, awakened, having arrived at a turn, then pushing off. At play with instability, worthy of mastery, tires going at speed along the packed sand of a road that ran from field to field without discernible end in all of Europe. Zutphen to Winterswijk. Hot local. This old route I once took each summer to be met by a brisk, smiling someone. My pale yellow ticket, a Liber Ingressus. The station was a composition with yellow, iron black, white, and gray. Sometimes I too would go to meet that train. Oh, Papa. Stepped down with care from a burgundy car in the evening.
The crow took a cracker, and my grandfather scolded it. 6, drinks under the apple tree, the foxgloves leaning over flower beds, and down at children sipping juice. White butterflies among the buddleia, and nettles with their feathery trichomes, and hoverflies in the last uncleared area where meadow met the garden and lawn, arbor and house. Armica was the crow's name. It stepped sideways, crossed its beak on the bench. The order of 6 o'clock, shoulder blades settling down the back, salt on fingers, prints on glasses, books closed, their linen covers warming in the westerly light.
The child moved through the hour from fridge to table to fridge again with sure command, small strength and purpose, all his might against the magnetic door gasket. Consented to being dressed, consented to the descent of stairs, step over step to meet the bus, moving torso, hips, this way and that, in an early dance to the tune of protest, clutching a black train as he boarded, and the driver swung the doors shut, and I waved at the children pressing their faces to the windows as it drove towards the river. May they all be covered by feathers.
Thank you, Catherine. That was exquisite. I think that if anyone who's here who hasn't spoken would like to say anything, please, now you can say whatever you'd like or tell us a story about Saskia. If you don't, that's okay. I know that many of you have already spoken at the beautiful Barnard Memorial. But thank you so much for coming today. I think I'm going to always think of Saskia astride on a bicycle. That image is so beautiful and so Saskia, the astride, the kind of power that she had. and to be on a vehicle that's going to, take her past the world. That's just such a beautiful image of herself, I think. Communication is hard, I know. So I will just say thank you all for coming this evening. It was extremely beautiful. It was a very good thing to do, I think. We don't have many rituals for death in our society. In fact, I don't know if we have any. And it's one of the things I think that makes it so difficult for contemporary people to understand what's happened. It's so confusing and frightening. And Miranda and I had the privilege, and Catherine and Fiona, the privilege to sort of watch it happening, and sort of be there almost in an 18th century way, which was incredibly difficult, but also really a privilege. And I just wish that we could deal with death in a different way, so it's not so sad and so terrible or so frightening. But again, Saskia was given this gift by Elise and her carers of having an incredibly organized and quite beautiful ending. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for being here. If anyone wants to speak, we can unmute everyone now, and you can all at least say goodbye to each other. And thank you for spending your afternoon thinking about Saskia and remembering her and honoring her poetry in this way. It's really beautiful to witness your feelings towards her and your love of her. So we really appreciate you taking this time.
Thank you. Goodbye, Elise.
Thank you so much, all of you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much. And to end it with Catherine saying, "May we all be covered with feathers."
Yes.
It's so beautiful and so sad. And I'm so moved by what you did today. Thank you so much.
We love you so much, Elise, and we are here for you. Yes, Miranda. Miranda and Catherine and Fiona. I should say that I don't know if I said this out loud, but really we have all souls because of Catherine. We would not have it
Absolutely.
if Catherine had not been there and pulled it out and pulled it together. So
day after day, week after week, she would come and sit there next to Saskia, and we'd close the door, and they did their deep, mysterious work. And here it is.
So beautiful.
It would not have happened without Catherine.
No, Catherine, thank you.
It's incredible. So much beauty.
She was
reading
full
today.
of beauty.
It's so extraordinary for a mother to hear all of you, all these voices, all the students, to hear about our beloved. Yeah. Thank you so much.
The students, the Barnard women, my God, you're great.
Yeah.
I was a Barnard woman, but I was a mess. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Elise, I just wanted to say, it wasn't until I met you that I began to understand where Saskia's beautiful soul and beautiful way of being and her extraordinary compassion, her sort of gift for being, that I understood it because it came from you. I didn't know that until I met you, and then I was like, it runs in the family.
Oh, Fiona, she was so much more than me, but it's thank you. Thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you to the hosts. Thank you so much, Reagan and Jennifer, for doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Miranda and Tom and everyone for reading.
Thank you, everyone, for being
you,
here and for
everyone.
reading. It was really beautiful. I'll always remember this.
It's very beautiful. It was very beautiful.
All right, now we say a cacophonous goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Have lovely
Goodbye.
evenings. Keep Saskia with you always. Elise will be in touch.
We'll be in touch.
All right. Mwah. Thank you, Jennifer, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. All right. Good night. I don't want to go. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you to all the
Oh,
students.
and there's Simon Dinnerstein. Hello, Simon. Kyra, did you write a poem that had a samovar in it?
I did, yeah, a long
I
time
know. I remember that poem. I remember hearing you read it.
Oh my God, I'm so honored.
I remember that. It was so beautiful. I loved it. I think I put a samovar in a poem afterwards.
Oh, I'm incredibly honored. Yeah,
I
that was-
remember that because I just when your face came full, I was like, I think it's her.
I think I wrote that poem in Saskia's class, actually, when she was my teacher at Barnard. Yeah.
It was excellent. It
Thank
was excellent. I think I even said to you, I pulled you aside. I said, oh my God, I couldn't believe, yeah. It's rare that happens. Amazing. But you had a great teacher.
Yes, I did. I really
Great,
did.
great teacher, which matters very much.
Yeah, it does. It made all the difference.
You can go to hell in a handbasket, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much. This was such an honor. Thank you.
Yes. So glad you read.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Goodbye. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night, Elise.
Good night, dear ones.
Good night, dear
Good
woman.
night.